We'll begin with step one of the 4-speed transmission here today. The entire process begins with the installation proper of the main drive gear. Some folks prefer to call this a clutch gear. I call it the main drive gear, like the old Harley-Davidson manuals. Before we install any bearings or any seals, we need to set proper end play of this gear so that in turn it doesn't overheat or burn up. So we select, I recommend if you're building from ground zero, a selection of these various thrust washers for the respective gear. I select a thin one, I measure it. In our case here, we're talking 46 thousandths, 45 thousandths with the caliper. I place it on the main drive gear in its proper position. Now, being I'm going for a final assembly here with this, the main race has been installed. Always check that the main race retaining ring is in the position prior to final assembly. Never move ahead without making sure that's installed. Okay, I've installed the respective thrust washer. Now, this tool simulates bearings for end plate test only. So, install this aluminum sleeve. In effect, I'm able to place this into the case. It's a little tricky. You want to make sure that that main drive gear thrust washer is up into the graduation of the main race itself in the case. You can actually feel it kind of flop into position. Now I'll install, just like in a final assembly, I'll install the main drive gear spacer. There are no variables in this. This is only one size. I install that as such. And now our special tool here, that's our sprocket nut, and we have a spacer attached to it which simulates a sprocket. We don't want to use a sprocket. In this case, it would be in our way for test and for final assembly. So this spacer is the same thickness as a sprocket. It simulates the entire assembly final. This is left-hand thread. We install it. It's a little tricky. And good hand, firm, tight. Now we check for end play with our main drive gear. As you can see, we're in good shape here. If that was tight, in effect, I'd pull this apart again, and I would select a thinner sized thrust washer and try again. If it was way too sloppy, I would go up in graduation. So we're in good shape here. We're ready to continue. Now we'll move to phase two. So we'll take this apart. We no longer need our tool for this application. We set it aside. We make sure our proper thrust washer is installed. Now we place it in. We're ready for bearings. This tool simulates the main shaft. This would be, in effect, third gear. Place this entire assembly, making sure that that thrust washer is in the recess of the main race in the case itself. Install it right over the top, as you see here. Now this is a brand new assembly, so in effect, we'll start with standard rollers. This has all been pre-fit. And we just kind of add a few. And again, for a final checkment, I like putting these in dry. In effect, I feed these in and stand these up with a proper pick device. I highly recommend something non-magnetic, or a magnetic piece fights you. You're pulling the bearing back out again after you've installed it. So you can either sharpen an old screwdriver, small, tiny screwdriver, in effect, but you want to roll these into position, as you can observe what I'm doing here. So I kind of spilled some in, and then I kind of you see how I stand them up again. As I stand them up, I rotate the main drive gear.